The goal for today is very simple. I want to make a supreme machine frame. The execution to make that machine frame, however, is anything but simple. Because we need ether gas, and in order to get ether gas, we need to use a laser drill on a wither. And how could that possibly go wrong? Also, the footage of the wither there was taken from our RL Craft series, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already. Very chaotic playthrough. First things first, we are going to need to get a few wither skeleton skills to spawn a wither. And now with some of those, we need to create an area to spawn the wither in, which I just so happen to have these newly opened areas here for that very matter. And although I am an idiot, I'm not entirely that stupid just to summon a wither without some form of proofing from it, which is where these tinted glass blocks then come into play. The recipe for them is pretty simple, just requiring coal and glass, so we will get our machine then making us up some of those. And then we will just set about creating a holding area for it. And that isn't looking too bad there. Nice and comfy. Now alongside our wither glass prison, I'm going to create something to help us keep the wither at bay, and that something is a stasis chamber, which requires soul sand, gas tiers, gold gears, piston, and an advanced machine frame. The advanced machine frame is made within a dissolution chamber using the components here, which also includes some pink slime and a simple machine frame. The pink slime is fairly simple to obtain. We just need to murder a few animals within a mob slaughtering factory, with the factory itself being very simple to create. So we will first of all breed in a few new cows. Then we'll place down the factory and attach a couple of fluid tanks to the back of it. Then we'll power it all on and allow the machine to then do its thing. And a few cows later, we then have our precious pink slime, which we can input directly into the fluid grid for us to use later. The simple machine frame required for the advanced machine frame is a very simple recipe requiring the components shown here. So we'll set up a pattern for it then and have our machine craft one of those then for us. And that's everything then to create the advanced machine frame. So that's then everything required to make the stasis chamber. And we're even rewarded with yet another advanced machine frame for completing the task. Right, let's get the stasis chamber then placed underneath of the prison, and that is now all set up and working for us here, which if I show the working area, then that will highlight the area that this is going to operate within the prison. And just to double check that it is working, yep. So I think for a bit of safety, we will turn on redstone mode and attach a lever to it to toggle it on and off. So now I can freely run about inside of the prison should I wish. Well, let's summon our test subject then. Although very quickly, just before we do, I will maybe bring over yet another test subject. Sorry friend, but for science. And the stasis chamber does seem to be working here, which is grand, but I'm also going to very quickly turn it off, just because I will require a certain flower from this chap, so sorry cow. But the stasis chamber is back in operation, so let's very quickly just murder this guy. And this is another reason why we needed the additional power from our magmatic dynamos. I really did not want this stasis chamber turning off whilst doing all of this. I definitely do not want that nasty bugger escaping into our factory here. Good, here's our goodies. And of course, very importantly, our first nether star drop. Well, we can successfully enslave these poor creatures here now. So, naturally, I think that the next step should be to start torturing it by drilling into its head with a massive laser for some precious ether. Although before we do, it just doesn't seem right to keep this trapped creature here and not give it a name. There. Willy the Wither. Salt in the wound with that name, I think. To extract the ether gas, we'll need a few laser drills, which are fairly standard to make, and we'll need a fluid laser base as well, which will use our spare advanced machine frame. We will also require a purple laser lens, which we can create from some latex, glass, and a purple dye within the dissolution chamber. So let's get our machine then making these parts for us. And now the slightly dangerous part, just setting the laser up just above the Wither's head. Yep, that's looking good so far. Now just to turn the lasers in so that they face the laser base. And the laser drills have already set their target, so are very slowly starting to operate here. We will put the purple laser lens into the fluid laser base, then get everything connected to the power grid, and already I've seen that the system is starting to work because we're already getting out our ether gas. And I can increase the speed that we gather up the ether gas by creating a few speed tier upgrades, as well as a few more laser drills, of course. Then I can install all of the new drills with their speed upgrades, and we can greatly increase the speed that we mine the Wither and get out our ether gas. So it's then really not before long before we can take out our first bucket of ether gas, which we will once again just input into the fluid grid, and that should then be everything we will require in order to make the supreme machine frame. So we will get our machine making us up our first block of it, and in the dissolution chamber, that's the simple machine frames being crafted, then the advanced ones, and finally the supreme one. We now have our first supreme machine frame, which, if we then combine it with some steel ingots within a tier 1 basic crafting table to create a steel casing, that then opens up the door to the mechanism mod, and that's where the real automation begins.